Well, this appropriately is the presidential palace in Estonia, in the capital Tallinn, where I'm speaking this coming weekend. And like all over the world today, the conversations here have been about the happenings in the United States and another presidential palace, if you like, called the White House, and who is the new president. And there are many ways of looking at this result today. One is that more than 300 million people in America were given the choice, in my view anyway, between a catastrophe and a disaster. And that says something massive about the nature of the political system that claims that it represents the interests of the people and the choices of the people. It's not difficult to manipulate choice if you control what those choices are going to be. And in this case, it was Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. If we call Clinton, I think appropriately, the catastrophe, then America has dodged a bullet in that sense today, and literally so, because one thing's for sure, that if Clinton had have won the presidency, then America and the Western world was almost certainly going to war with Russia. That might still happen, but it was a certainty if she'd have come to power. And this is what the demonization of Russia and the build-up of forces along the Russian border, NATO forces, has been all about. Instead, a majority of those that voted have chosen Donald Trump. And the question is why? And there are some positive expressions of that, even though I think that Trump will be a disaster, and I think that those that have put their faith in Trump are going to be deeply disappointed with what happens during his time in the White House. However, there are some positive things about this, which reflect something that's happening, and I'm seeing it on this world tour all over the world. And we saw it with Brexit in the United Kingdom. And that is a change, a very obvious change in increasing swathes of the collective human psyche, which is looking at the world anew and rejecting the political establishment. Now, I don't think for a second that Donald Trump is an outsider, but that is irrelevant to the fact that he was perceived by vast numbers of people to be an outsider, to be someone who was challenging the establishment, who was, in the phrase that was so often used, who was draining the swamp. So to look at why this result happened, we need to look at perceptions, because from perceptions come actions, like how you vote. So we had the perception, and it was an absolutely correct one, quite obviously and demonstrably, that Hillary Clinton was establishment to her DNA, has a whole political career based on corruption, manipulation, and merciless destruction of opponents. I mean, Bernie Sanders, I rest my case. And therefore, she was always going to be a really, really difficult sell. And if she had have been against almost anyone except Donald Trump, in terms of a candidate that people saw as in any way positive, then she would have lost by an even greater margin. So on one side, you've got the perception of Clinton as an establishment to clone to her core, And therefore, it was always a difficult sell, even in normal times. But these are not normal times. These are changing times. She proved to be an impossible sell when this shift in the psyche is happening, where people are rejecting the political class and the political establishment that has dictated the direction of the world and the fine detail of people's lives for so long. So it's not so much what Donald Trump is that brought this about. It is what so many people perceived him to be, which is an outsider of the system. And so the outcome of this election mirrors, in terms of, I think, the motivations behind it, what happened with Brexit in the United Kingdom, where again there was a massive rejection of the political class and the political establishment, virtually the entirety of which was urging people with threats of dire consequences to stay in the EU. So we are in changing times. And while I don't think for a minute that Donald Trump is going to deliver what so many people thought he was going to deliver, put that aside and look at the reasons for why he attracted so much support. Yes, a significant amount would have been support for Donald Trump because he wasn't Hillary Clinton, and they were only given a choice of the two. And again, a significant part of Clinton's vote, which says an even bigger statement about her, given the vote she got, was because she wasn't Donald Trump. It was an extraordinary, almost culmination of this political stitch-up that the motivation of so many was to vote against the person they like the least. However, it's also an expression of this gathering and ever-gathering rejection of the political establishment, which Trump was perceived to be a vehicle for expressing. Where does it go from here? Well, it depends where Donald Trump goes from here and how much he himself becomes in office just another clone of the political establishment. And I think people are going to be disappointed. And I hope that should that happen, that people will go on to the next stage of this awakening. And that's to realize that the political system itself, no matter how you perceive the person you put in office to be, is the problem. The way society is structured, the way it is dictated to by the hidden hand, the hidden networks that ultimately control these people, whether they're Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or wherever else. And that we have to go to the next stage of the awakening to the world and realize that it's not the political system that's going to change anything. It's the vast majority ceasing to cooperate with the actions of the few and the dictates of the few, whether they are one party or the other party, whether they are Clinton or Trump or Bush or Obama or whoever. Because the few, what's called the political class, political establishment, financial class, financial establishment, can only dictate to the vast majority because the vast majority cooperate with the diktats and the laws imposed by the few. When we stop cooperating with laws that are unjust, with laws that are simply designed to take our freedoms away, that are designed to control our lives and what we can do and what we can't do in terms of free choice and free thought, when we stop cooperating with them and say we're not doing it, No, we're not abiding by that. We're not abiding by that. We're not going to let you build a prison and we put the bricks together, thank you very much. We're not doing it. If someone comes out of the White House, Clinton or Trump or anybody else, or out of Downing Street, and said we've had a meeting and we've decided that this is what's going to happen, it only happens if people, the vast majority, say, well, we better do it, it's the law. Well, that means whoever, the tiny few, that dictate the laws, no matter what they may be, impose their will on the vast majority. This is the next stage of awakening to how the world works. Not seeing some person as an outsider who's going to come and change everything. I think we're going to see in coming months that is not the case. In terms of what people think will happen. But to realize that the only way to stop the few imposing their will on the many is for the many to stop cooperating with the few, and the dictates and the laws, the rules and regulations of the few, where they are specifically designed to destroy free thought, free expression, and freedom of choice. So while, I think, like I say, people are going to be disappointed with what follows on, this is another significant expression that people have had enough. It's like a primal scream, a cry for help, a scream of frustration that was expressed through this vote for Trump. A scream of frustration at having no one listen to you. Having no one think about your interests when they're stitching up the world. And that's a good thing. But there are many stages, I would suggest, of this to go yet. And one of them is that we don't think that any person through the political system is going to change the world for the better, because we have to do that. And we have to do that together.